Hi guys, I thought I'd give you a little bit of an update on how things are going with DYNAVISION for the Xbox. Things are going pretty well actually. My idea to vary the strength instead of the focus actually worked out. It's not perfect yet, I've got to tweak it quite a lot, but you can probably see already the background red rocket is now blurring, whereas if I look up over to there it should come into sharp focus. Yep. And so if I look at this car up close, you can probably see the trees in the background softening. A little easier to see. Whereas if I then look up over at the rocket again, we're getting the clarity. It is still not perfect, but it's not as unpleasant as it was. It's not jerking all over the place. The effect is not really offensive to the eye. So I've actually managed to get it working. I'm not sure how well I'm going to get it working. So for example there you can see you've got quite a lot of blur. If you look at the water tower in the top right, it's very blurred. The Nuka-Cola sign to the left is a little blurred but not as blurred, and the effect is overall pretty good. The focus and defocus is a little slower than it would be on PC, but that's something I could probably live with. You could just adjust the strength so it is lower. I've got the strength set pretty high at the moment, so the effect is fairly strong, as you can see in the background. I might want to tweak the transition values. I might want to tweak the range and several other things. But in theory, this works. It's a whole new setting in the DYNAVISION settings. It's not, strictly speaking, true dynamic depth of field, at least not in the same way. That's the one I was using, the dynamic depth of field. What that one does is, whenever you look at something, it just focuses on that item, and so everything else defocuses. The closer you get to things, the more things go out of focus. And as you can see, the sign's really massively out of focus. But if you also look at, say, the road, or even the close trees, they are out of focus too. That's because the camera's focused. But you also saw it was very, very jerky. Now again, don't judge it by the strength. I've set the strength to be quite high so I can see the effect as it moves. But if I switch to the dynamic light, the sign itself never really blurs. If you look in the background, you can see some trees are blurred and the terrain is blurred. And if I go further back, let's see, if I go quite far back and look at this lamppost, and as I get closer, you'll probably see the background is blurring, but it's not blurring the closer objects. And the reason for this is what I'm doing is I'm faking the dynamic depth of field. It's more like I'm using a static depth of field, because we do actually have static depth of field options with DYNAVISION. Here's the mid-range one, and when it's applied you can see distant terrain objects are harder to see, so if you've got horrible texture problems it sort of hides those. And you can always do the short range one, which really does pretty much blur everything that isn't in the mid-range quite a lot. Well, what this has done, what I've done with this new version of the dynamic, is I have used one depth of field, almost like a static depth of field, and it's on now, but the strength is set to practically 0, so you cannot see it. The closer I go to an object, the stronger the effect gets. What this means is I'm never changing the focus, and that was what was causing the horrible problems. Because it uses, apparently it's called bokeh DOF, whenever I change the focus point, it causes that horrible, disgusting jump. Whereas I'm never changing the focus point with this. What I'm doing is I'm altering the strength.
And a loaded weapon.
If
doesn't get much better than this.
McCready, move out of the way. If I slowly head towards the tree, you'll see in the background the strength of the blur starts to get stronger and stronger and stronger. That's what I'm doing. I'm basically faking dynamic depth of field. So you can look to the distance and see clearly into the distance if you want, but when you look very closely at an object, the background objects start to blur. That was a terrible choice. Let's pick this post. The background objects start to blur and you get, you know, that softening effect. Again, I've set this up to be quite high strength. You can, of course, always drop the strength. Focus speed won't do anything on this setting, so I'm probably going to disable that for the Xbox version. It's really pointless. I may automatically disable that if you're not selecting a decent or applicable mode. Actually, that's about 50%. So you can still see the blur off in the distance. Look at the houses in the distance. They are blurring slightly, but it's not as great an effect. And of course, it clears out when you start looking. The net effect of this is it's kind of good. It kind of gives you the depth of field, but it doesn't give you the same... Let me just put the strength back up. It doesn't give you the same effect the full dynamic depth of field would give you. So if I change it to the full... Oh no, that's off. Ugh. I'm rushing. Don't rush the menus. If I change it to the proper dynamic depth of field, and put it on strength 100, and then do this, even though it'll go horribly jerky zooming in, you can see even the trees close behind are actually slightly blurred because of the way this works. Let me, if I can get closer to the character, it gets even stronger. There you go. You see how the trees, even the trees right behind, get very, very blurred? That's because the focus has been pulled in. Unfortunately, with the light version of the mod, you don't get that. Now, not everyone's going to want that. That's really good for people who love screenshots and that type of thing, but it might not be for everyone anyway. If I now turn around, you can see the distant terrain is very blurred, but the close trees are not. The focus is still exactly what it was. So you get a sharper view of the closer area. It's only the distant terrain that fades. So as I said, it's not quite as good as the normal depth of field, but I don't think it's too bad. I think it shows promise. I'll keep tweaking it, see if I can get it smoother, but honestly, I'm reasonably happy with this. I'm also going to leave it in for the PC version because it works just fine for the PC version, and if you for some reason really want to use bokeh doff on the PC version, this will be the option for you. But also, even if you want to use the normal version, the normal non-bokeh version, this is probably a lot lighter on the system. It reacts reasonably smoothly, and some people are going to actually prefer this setting. So I will actually leave that one up for the PC as well. So that's where I am. Things are actually looking better than they did last time. It's still very much a work in progress, and I'm probably going to spend a few more days messing around before I'm happy with it. But I actually think this is showing some promise now. It's slightly dynamic-ish depth of field. Variable static depth of field. Sounds awful. It is dynamic in a way. It's dynamic strength, just not dynamic focus. So there you go. Thought I'd keep you up to date. I will give you further details when I'm happy with the mod.